Commander stood on the bridge of the Dominion warship Eternal Conqueror, his 4 yellow eyes scanning the holographic display before him. The Empire had crushed 17 species across the galaxy. They had burned worlds, enslaved billions, and built an empire that stretched across 3,000 star systems. Nothing had ever stopped them. Nothing had ever made them afraid. Until now, felt nothing but confidence. The small moon ahead, designated KR7, was supposed to be empty. Their long-range sensors had detected faint energy signatures coming from beneath its frozen surface. Intelligence suggested it was a hidden outpost belonging to a species called humans. Made a clicking sound with his mandibles, which was the equivalent of laughter. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as a young species. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Their colonies numbered less than 50. Their military was considered primitive compared to the great powers of the galaxy. The High Council had not even bothered to conquer them yet because they were considered too insignificant. "Commander," said Lieutenant Al, approaching with a data tablet, "we have completed our scans. The outpost appears to be approximately 2 kilometers below the surface. There are no defensive weapons detected, no ships, no communication signals. It appears abandoned." "Abandoned," repeated, "or hiding." "Unknown, Commander. Should we send a probe first?" Considered this for a moment. The way was direct assault. They did not waste time with careful reconnaissance. They struck hard, struck fast, and crushed all resistance. That was how they had built their empire. That was how they would continue to build it. "No probes," decided. "Prepare 3 assault teams. We go in personally. If there are humans down there, we capture them. The High Council will want to study this species before we add them to our conquest list." Lieutenant Al bowed his head. "As you command." Within 1 hour, 3 assault shuttles descended through the thin atmosphere of Moon KR7. Each shuttle carried 20 soldiers, the finest warriors in the Empire. They were tall creatures, standing nearly 3 meters high, with armored exoskeletons that could stop most projectile weapons. Their 4 arms each ended in razor-sharp claws capable of cutting through metal. In close combat, no species had ever defeated them. The shuttles landed near a large metal door built into the side of a frozen cliff. The door was massive, clearly designed for heavy vehicles to pass through. Frost covered its surface, and there were no lights visible anywhere. Stepped out of his shuttle first, feeling the crunch of ice beneath his clawed feet. The cold did not bother him. Were adaptable creatures, able to survive in temperatures that would kill most species. He looked at the door and felt a strange sensation in his chest. Not fear, exactly. He did not know what fear felt like, but something made him hesitate for just a moment. "Breach the door," he ordered. His soldiers moved forward with plasma cutters. The metal of the door was thick, much thicker than expected. It took them nearly 20 minutes to cut through, which surprised. Most species did not build with such heavy materials. It was wasteful and expensive. When the door finally fell inward with a thunderous crash, darkness greeted them. The air that rushed out was stale but breathable. Activated the lights mounted on his armor and stepped inside. The corridor beyond was wide enough for 4 to walk side by side. The walls were made of the same heavy metal as the door, gray and featureless. There were no decorations, no signs, nothing to indicate what this place was or who had built it. Emergency lights flickered on as they moved deeper, casting everything in a dim red glow. "Spread out," commanded. "Search everything. Report any contact immediately." His 60 soldiers divided into smaller groups, each taking a different branching corridor. Took a team of 10 and headed toward what his scanner indicated was the center of the complex. The first thing they found was a storage room filled with metal containers. Ordered one opened. Inside were sealed packages of something that looked like food, preserved in vacuum-sealed bags. The labels were written in the human language, which his translator struggled to interpret. "Food supplies," Al observed. Enough here to feed hundreds for years. Why would they need so much food in a hidden outpost? Wondered aloud. They continued deeper. The next room they found was larger, filled with beds arranged in neat rows. Medical equipment stood beside each bed, machines that did not recognize. Some of the beds had restraints attached to them, thick metal bands designed to hold someone down. A medical facility, Al suggested. Studied one of the machines. It had a display screen, dark and inactive. He pressed a button, and to his surprise, it hummed to life. Strange symbols appeared on the screen, followed by what appeared to be biological data. He did not understand most of it, but he recognized a heart rate monitor. The readings showed were extreme, far beyond what he knew was normal for any species. "Commander," one of his soldiers called from across the room, "you should see this." Walked over to where the soldier stood. On the wall was a large poster with images of human beings. They were small creatures, only about 2 meters tall, with soft skin and no natural weapons. They looked fragile, weak, but the poster showed them doing something strange. They were exercising, pushing their bodies in various ways, lifting heavy objects, running on machines. The text on the poster was partially translated by his device. It read, "Adaptation Program Phase 3, push your limits." "What is this place?" Al asked quietly. Before could answer, his communication device crackled. "Commander, this is Team 3. We have found something in the eastern section. You need to see this immediately." Felt that strange sensation again in his chest. "On my way." It took him 10 minutes to reach Team 3's position. When he arrived, he found his soldiers standing in a large circular room, all of them completely still, all of them staring at the walls. The walls were covered in screens, hundreds of them, each displaying different images. Most showed planets, moons, space stations. Some showed cities filled with millions of beings. Others showed military installations, fleets of warships, defensive positions. Recognized many of them. They were worlds, military bases, fleets. "They have been watching us," Al whispered. But that was not the worst part. At the center of the room was a large table with a holographic projector. Someone had left it running. The hologram showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with the Empire highlighted in red. Small dots marked every major world, every military base, every shipyard. And there were lines drawn on the map: attack routes, invasion plans, target priorities. The humans had been planning to attack the Empire. Stared at the map, trying to process what he was seeing. This was impossible. Humans were a weak species. They had no military power. They had no advanced technology. They could not possibly be planning to attack the greatest empire in the galaxy. "Commander," a soldier said, his voice trembling, "look at this." The soldier had found a data terminal and managed to activate it. On the screen was a document written in human language. The translator worked on it for a moment, then displayed the text. "Project Prometheus classified. Objective: prepare humanity for inevitable galactic conflict. Status: Phase 4 complete. Phase 5 pending final approval. Notes: human volunteers have exceeded all expectations. Physical enhancement success rate now at 94%. Psychological conditioning holding stable. Combat simulations show improved performance against all known hostile species. Recommend accelerated timeline for deployment." Read the words twice, making sure he understood them correctly. Physical enhancement, psychological conditioning, combat simulations against all known hostile species. The humans were not a weak species hiding from the galaxy. They were preparing for war. "Find everything," ordered, his voice harder than before. "Download every file, record every image, search every room. I want to know exactly what these humans have been doing here." His soldiers moved quickly, spreading throughout the complex. Remained in the command room, studying the holographic map of his empire. Each target was marked with detailed information about defenses, patrol schedules, and vulnerabilities. Someone had spent years gathering this intelligence. How had they not known about this? How had a species they considered primitive managed to spy on them so effectively? A message came through from Team 2. "Commander, we have found a training area. You need to see what is here." Made his way to the training area, which turned out to be a massive underground chamber. It was larger than any single room on his warship. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness, and spread across the floor were obstacles, targets, and combat simulation equipment. But what caught his attention was the training dummy standing in the center of the room. It was shaped like a warrior, accurate down to the smallest detail. It had armor, weapons, and even simulated vital points marked on its body. Beside it were other dummies representing other species. All species that they had either conquered or planned to conquer. The humans had been training to fight all of them. One of his soldiers approached a target range and examined the holes in the targets. His 4 eyes widened with surprise. "Commander, these impact patterns suggest projectile velocities far beyond standard human weapons. Either they have developed new weapons, or what?" The soldier hesitated. "Or their soldiers have become strong enough to fire weapons that would break a normal human's arms." Felt cold for the first time in his life, and it was not from the moon's frozen atmosphere. His communication device activated again. This time, the voice on the other end was filled with fear, which was something he had never heard from a soldier before. "Commander, this is Team 1. We are in the lower levels. We found something. Bodies. Commander, there are bodies down here. They are not human. They are, Commander, there are dead soldiers down here." Felt his heart stop. "What did you say?" "Bodies, Commander, dozens of them. They have been dead for a long time, and Commander, they have been cut apart, studied. There are notes everywhere. The humans have been studying our anatomy. They have been learning how to kill us." The command room suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed to press inward, looked around at his soldiers and saw something in their eyes that he had never seen before. Fear. For the first time in the history of the Empire, their soldiers were afraid. And somewhere in the darkness of this frozen moon, something moved. The emergency lights flickered. A distant sound echoed through the corridors, something that might have been a footstep, or might have been something worse. They were not alone in this outpost. They had never been alone. The lights flickered again and grabbed his plasma rifle, pointing it into the darkness ahead. His soldiers formed a defensive circle, their weapons raised, their eyes scanning every shadow. For 30 long seconds, nothing happened. The silence was worse than any sound. "Team 1 spoke into his communicator. Report your position." Static answered him. "Team 1, respond immediately." More static, then a brief burst of sound that might have been a scream, cut short. "Team 3, do you have visual on Team 1's position?" "Negative, Commander. They were in the lower levels, Sector 7. We are 2 levels above them." Made a decision. "All teams converge on my position immediately. We are leaving this place." He was not a coward. No commander had ever retreated from battle. But something was wrong here, deeply wrong, and his instincts told him that staying would be a mistake. They had found enough information. The High Council needed to know about this human outpost and its secrets. His team began moving back toward the entrance, keeping their weapons ready. The corridors that had seemed merely dark before now seemed alive with shadows. Every corner could hide an enemy. Every doorway could conceal a threat. They passed the medical room with its strange beds and machines. They passed the storage room with its endless supplies. They were almost at the main corridor that led to the entrance when Lieutenant Al stopped suddenly, his 4 eyes fixed on something on the floor. "Commander, look." Look down. On the metal floor, barely visible in the emergency lighting, were marks. Scratches in the metal, deep gouges that had torn through the surface like it was made of soft clay. They formed a pattern, leading away from the main corridor and into a side passage. "What could make marks like this?" Al asked. Knelt down to examine them closer. The scratches were evenly spaced, consistent in depth, made by something with incredible strength. They reminded him of claw marks, but no creature he knew could scratch through military-grade metal like this. Then he noticed something else. Beside the scratches were drops of fluid, purple in color, blood, and it was fresh. "Someone was dragged this way," a soldier observed. "Recently." Stood up slowly. Team 1 had been in the lower levels, far from here, but now there was fresh blood on this level, near their position. That meant something had moved through the outpost faster than they had, something that had caught one of his soldiers without anyone noticing. "Stay together," he ordered. "No one separates from the group for any reason." They continued toward the exit, moving faster now. The main corridor was ahead, just around the next corner. Could see the faint glow of his teams cutting torch marks on the main door. They were almost out. Then the lights went out completely. Total darkness surrounded them. Activated his helmet lights, and his soldiers did the same, creating small circles of illumination in the overwhelming black. Their breathing sounded loud in the silence, harsh and rapid. "Everyone stay calm," said, though his own hearts were beating faster than normal. "Move forward, the exit is close." They took 3 steps forward before they heard it. A sound from somewhere in the darkness behind them. Not a footstep, not a voice. It was a clicking sound, rhythmic and deliberate, like someone tapping a claw against metal. Spun around, his weapon raised. His helmet light illuminated the corridor behind them, showing nothing but empty space and closed doors. The clicking stopped. "Move," commanded. They walked faster, almost running now. The main corridor opened up before them, and felt a moment of relief when he saw the damaged door ahead, the entrance through which they had come. Moonlight filtered through the opening, pale and cold but welcoming. Then one of his soldiers screamed. Turned to see the soldier being pulled into a side doorway, something wrapped around his leg. The soldier fired his weapon wildly, plasma bolts lighting up the corridor in bright flashes. For a brief instant, saw what was pulling him. It was a human, but not like any human he had ever seen. This creature was massive, nearly as tall as with muscles that bulged beneath pale skin. Its eyes reflected the plasma fire with a strange glow, and its face was twisted into an expression that was not quite human anymore. It moved with impossible speed, dragging the screaming soldier into the darkness as easily as might drag a small child. "Open fire," shouted. His remaining soldiers fired into the doorway, filling the space with plasma bolts. The screaming stopped abruptly. When the firing ceased, approached the doorway carefully, his weapon ready. The room beyond was empty. No bodies, no blood, no sign of the soldier or the creature that had taken him, just darkness and silence. "That is impossible," Al said. "We hit it. I saw the plasma strike its body. Nothing can survive that kind of firepower." Did not answer. He was thinking about the documents they had found, the ones that talked about physical enhancement, about pushing human limits. He was thinking about the training dummies shaped like warriors, about the targets with impact patterns suggesting superhuman strength. The humans had not just been preparing for war. They had been changing themselves, transforming into something new, something terrible. "Everyone to the exit now," ordered. They ran, all discipline forgotten, all training abandoned. 60 of the finest warriors had entered this outpost, and now fewer than 40 ran toward the exit like frightened animals. Did not blame them. He was running too. They burst through the damaged door and into the cold moonlight. The assault shuttles were waiting where they had left them, silent and dark. Ran toward his shuttle, his soldiers following close behind. Halfway to the shuttles, he noticed something was wrong. The nearest shuttle had its boarding ramp down, which was not how they had left it. He slowed, raising his weapon, approaching carefully. Inside the shuttle, he found the pilots. Both of them were dead, their bodies broken in ways that made stomach turn. They had been killed quickly, efficiently, without any chance to call for help or sound an alarm. "Check the other shuttles," he ordered. The reports came back quickly. All 3 shuttles had been sabotaged. Engines destroyed, communication systems disabled, weapons taken offline. They were stranded on this moon with no way to call for help and no way to leave. "Commander," Al said quietly, pointing toward the outpost entrance. Looked, standing in the doorway, barely visible in the dim light, were figures. Human figures, but wrong somehow, their proportions strange, their movements unnatural. He counted 5 of them, then 10, then more emerging from the darkness behind the first group. They did not speak, they did not move to attack, they simply stood there watching, waiting. "Form a defensive perimeter," ordered. "Use the shuttles for cover." His soldiers obeyed, arranging themselves behind the disabled shuttles, weapons pointed at the growing crowd of figures at the outpost entrance. Counted at least 30 of them now, and more were appearing every moment. "What do they want?" a soldier asked. "They want us to be afraid," replied. "They want us to feel what their prey feels." One of the figures stepped forward, moving into the moonlight where could see it clearly. It had once been a human female, he guessed, though now it was something else entirely. Her body was covered in scars, marks of surgery and modification. Her muscles were visible beneath tight skin, coiled like cables, ready to explode into action. Her eyes had been modified too, replaced with mechanical implants that glowed faint red in the darkness. She smiled and saw that her teeth had been replaced with metal, sharpened to points. "Welcome to Prometheus Station," she said, her voice calm and measured, almost friendly. "We have been waiting for you." Tightened his grip on his weapon. "You speak our language." "We speak many languages," she replied. "We have had plenty of time to learn, plenty of specimens to study." She gestured toward the outpost behind her. "Did you find our collection? The soldiers we have been examining. They taught us so much about your species, your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities, the places where you can be cut, broken, killed." "What are you?" The woman's smile widened. "We are what happens when humans decide to survive. Your empire has been conquering the galaxy for 10,000 years. Species after species has fallen before you. Billions have died. Worlds have burned. And everyone thought it would continue forever. Everyone thought nothing could stop the—" She took another step forward, and despite all his training, despite all his experience, felt himself take a step back. "But humans are different," she continued. "We do not accept extinction. We do not surrender to fate. When we learned about your empire, when we understood what was coming for us, we made a choice. We decided to become something that could fight back, something that could survive." "You cannot defeat us," said, though his voice sounded weak even to his own ears. "The Empire has millions of soldiers, thousands of warships. You are nothing compared to our power." The woman laughed, and it was a sound that would haunt for the rest of his life. "You still do not understand. This outpost is just one of many. There are hundreds like it, scattered across the galaxy, hidden in places you have never thought to look. Thousands of humans have volunteered for the Prometheus program. Thousands have been transformed, trained, prepared." She spread her arms wide. "We are not preparing to fight your empire. We have been ready for years. We have been waiting for the right moment. And now, thanks to you, that moment has arrived." Heard a sound behind him and spun around. More figures were emerging from the frozen landscape, appearing from hiding places beneath the ice, from buried tunnels he had not detected. They were surrounded, dozens of modified humans closing in from all sides. "You are going to die here," the woman said. "All of you, but not quickly. We still have much to learn about the— Your bodies will teach us new things, help us improve our techniques. And when we are done, we will use what we have learned to destroy everything your empire has built." Raised his weapon. "We will not go quietly." "No," the woman agreed. That is what makes humans different from other species. We never go quietly, we fight, we struggle, we rage against the dying of the light. Her red eyes seemed to glow brighter. And now, so will you. Fight well, Commander. Show us what your species is capable of. It will make our victory that much. The attack came from everywhere at once. The modified humans moved with speed that could barely track, crossing the distance between them in heartbeats. His soldiers fired, plasma bolts filling the air with light and heat, but the humans twisted and dodged, moving between the shots like they could see them coming. The first soldier fell when a human male, his arms replaced with mechanical limbs, tore through his armor like it was made of paper. Another fell when a human female, moving so fast she was barely visible, struck his head with enough force to crack his skull despite his natural armor. Fired again and again, and he saw some of his shots connect, saw humans stagger and fall. But they did not stay down. Even with holes burned through their bodies, they rose again, their wounds healing before his eyes, their modified flesh knitting itself back together. Regeneration, Al gasped beside him. They can regenerate. Fall back to the shuttles, ordered, form a tight circle. His remaining soldiers tried to obey, but the humans were among them now, mixing with his troops, making it impossible to fire without hitting his own people. Watched as his soldiers died one by one, pulled down by creatures that should not exist, torn apart by hands that had been made stronger than claws. Al fell beside him, a human's metallic teeth buried in his throat. Shot the creature, blowing its head apart, but it was too late for his lieutenant. More humans closed in and found himself backed against a shuttle, alone, surrounded by monsters wearing human faces. The woman with the red eyes approached, walking calmly through the chaos. Her soldiers parted to let her pass. She stopped in front of, close enough that he could have touched her with his claws. "You fought well," she said. "Better than most. I think we will keep you alive a little longer. There is so much we can learn from a commander." Snarled and swung his claws at her face. She caught his arm effortlessly, her grip stronger than any creature he had ever encountered. With a casual twist, she broke his arm at the elbow, and he screamed in pain. "Take him below," she ordered. "Keep him conscious. I want him to see everything." As the modified humans dragged him back toward the outpost, looked up at the stars above. Somewhere out there, his empire continued its conquest, unaware of what was coming, unaware that the prey they had dismissed as insignificant had become the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. He had come to this moon expecting an easy victory. He had found something else entirely. He had found humanity's answer to extinction. And it was terrifying. 3 standard days passed before saw natural light again. They kept him in a cell deep beneath the surface, a small room with metal walls and a single light that never turned off. They came for him regularly, taking him to examination rooms where they studied his body with instruments he did not understand. They took samples of his blood, his tissue, his bone. They mapped his nervous system, tested his reflexes, measured his strength. Through it all, they explained everything. That was perhaps the worst part. They wanted him to understand exactly what they were doing and why. They wanted him to carry this knowledge with him, to spread it to his empire, to plant the seed of fear in every who heard his story. The woman with the red eyes visited him often. Her name was Dr. Sarah, and she had been one of the original designers of the Prometheus program. Before the program, she had been a normal human, a scientist working on medical research. Now she was something else, a living weapon designed for a single purpose. "Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us constantly," she told him during one of her visits. "Predators hunted us, diseases ravaged us, ice ages froze us, famine starved us, floods drowned us, and through all of it we survived, we adapted, we overcame." She sat across from him, looking almost relaxed, almost friendly. If did not know what she was capable of, he might have thought she was just a normal person having a conversation. "Do you know what makes humans truly dangerous?" she asked. It is not our intelligence, though we are intelligent. It is not our technology, though we have developed impressive technology. It is our refusal to accept limitations. When something is impossible, we find a way to make it possible. When nature says no, we say yes. Listened in silence. His broken arm had been treated by the human medics, set and stabilized so it would heal properly. They needed him healthy, they said. They needed him able to travel when the time came. When we learned about the Empire, we knew we could not defeat you through conventional means, Doctor continued. Your military was too powerful, your numbers too great. So we did what humans have always done. We changed the rules of the game. She leaned forward. The Prometheus program started 30 years ago. We recruited volunteers from every human colony, people who were willing to sacrifice their normal lives to become something new. We experimented, failed, tried again. Many died during the early phases. Many more were damaged beyond repair. But we learned from every failure, improved with every iteration. Finally spoke, you turned your own people into monsters. Doctor smiled. We turned our people into survivors. The modifications are extensive, yes. Enhanced musculature, reinforced skeletal structure, accelerated healing, improved sensory perception, and dozens of smaller changes that make us faster, stronger, and harder to kill. The psychological conditioning helps us process pain without losing focus, fear without losing courage. We are still human, Commander. We are just better humans. You cannot defeat an empire with a few thousand modified soldiers. You are right, she agreed, which is why we have been doing more than just building soldiers. She stood and walked to the door of his cell. Come with me. There is something I want you to see. Followed her through the corridors of the outpost, passing other modified humans who watched him with curious eyes. They did not seem afraid of him, did not seem concerned that a commander was walking freely among them. They knew what they were capable of. They knew he was no threat. Doctor led him to a large room filled with holographic displays and communication equipment. Dozens of humans worked at stations, monitoring data streams that could not interpret. This was clearly a command center of some kind, the nerve center of the outpost. For the past 30 years, we have been doing more than just modifying soldiers, Doctor said, gesturing at the displays. We have been gathering intelligence on every major power in the galaxy. We have infiltrated diplomatic missions, hacked communication networks, and bribed officials. We know more about your empire than your own High Council knows. She pointed at a particular display which showed a star map of the empire. We know the exact location and strength of every military installation. We know the patrol routes of every fleet, the defensive capabilities of every world, the supply lines that keep your war machine running. We have identified every weakness, every vulnerability, every point of failure. Stared at the display, feeling a chill spread through his body. The information shown was incredibly detailed, far more detailed than anything he had access to as a commander. If this was accurate, if the humans truly had this level of intelligence on the Empire, then everything changed. But intelligence alone does not win wars, Doctor continued, which brings me to the second part of our plan. She led him to another section of the command center, where a different display showed something that made hearts nearly stop. It was a fleet of warships, human warships, gathered around a distant star. He counted hundreds of vessels, from small attack craft to massive capital ships that rivaled anything in the Navy. Where did these come from? He demanded. Humanity does not have a military capable of producing such a fleet. Doctor's smile was cold. Officially, no. The human government has maintained a policy of neutrality and minimal military development for centuries, but the Prometheus program is not run by the government. We operate independently, funded by private donors who understand the threat your empire poses. These ships were built in secret facilities scattered across the galaxy, assembled by automated factories that require no living workers to operate. She zoomed in on one of the larger ships. Each vessel is crewed by Prometheus soldiers. Each crew has been trained for years in tactics specifically designed to counter strategies. We have studied every battle your empire has ever fought, analyzed every victory and every defeat. We know how you think, how you fight, how you react to unexpected situations. Felt the weight of what he was seeing pressing down on him. This was not a desperate species preparing a futile resistance. This was a carefully planned, methodically executed campaign of preparation for galactic war. The humans had been planning this for decades, building their strength in secret while the Empire expanded without concern. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. "Because we want you to deliver a message," Doctor replied. "In a few hours, we are going to release you. We are going to give you a shuttle capable of reaching the nearest outpost. We are going to let you return to your empire with everything you have seen and learned." She turned to face him directly. "And then we are going to watch you try to warn them." "Understood. You want them to know we are coming." "We want them to be afraid," Doctor corrected. "We want them to spend their resources preparing defenses against an attack they cannot predict. We want their commanders to argue about strategy while our forces move into position. We want their soldiers to lie awake at night wondering when the humans will strike and where." Her red eyes seemed to glow brighter in the dim light of the command center. "Fear is a weapon, Commander. Your empire has used it for 10,000 years to keep conquered species in line. Now you will learn what it feels like to be on the other side." True to her word, they released him 6 hours later. They gave him a small shuttle, equipped with just enough fuel to reach the nearest controlled system. They loaded the shuttle with data files containing carefully selected intelligence, enough to prove the threat was real, but not enough to reveal their actual plans. Before he boarded the shuttle, Doctor came to see him off. She stood at the base of the boarding ramp, looking up at him with an expression that might have been respect, might have been pity. "Tell your High Council what you have seen," she said. "Tell them about the Prometheus program, about our soldiers, about our fleet. Tell them that humanity is coming for them." Paused at the top of the ramp. "Why do you hate us so much? We have never attacked your species. We have never even threatened you." Doctor's expression hardened. "We have seen what you do to the species you conquer. We have talked to survivors, people who escaped the destruction of their worlds. We know about the slave camps, the forced breeding programs, the systematic erasure of cultures and histories. We know that if your empire turned its attention to humanity, we would suffer the same fate." She took a step closer. "So we decided not to let that happen. We decided to strike first, to destroy your capacity for conquest before you could use it against us. This is not about hatred, Commander. This is about survival. Your empire is a threat to every free species in the galaxy. We are going to end that threat permanently." Had no response to that. He turned and walked into the shuttle, sealing the door behind him. As the vessel lifted off from the frozen surface of Moon KR-7, he looked down at the outpost one last time. Modified humans stood outside, watching his departure, their enhanced eyes tracking his shuttle until it disappeared into the darkness of space. The journey to the nearest system took 4 days. 4 days of solitude, of silence, of thinking about everything he had witnessed. 4 days of replaying the battle in his mind, remembering the faces of his soldiers as they died, the speed and strength of the modified humans, the casual confidence of Doctor as she explained their plans. When he finally arrived at Outpost 7, he was immediately taken into custody. The military authorities were suspicious of his story, convinced that it must be some kind of trap or deception. They interrogated him for hours, demanding details, questioning every part of his account. Finally, they reviewed the data files the humans had given him. The room fell silent as the commanders and intelligence officers studied the information, their eyes widening as they recognized their own military installations, their own defensive positions, their own secret projects laid bare in perfect detail. "This is impossible," one admiral said. How could the humans know all this? They have been watching us for decades, replied. They have infiltrated our systems, corrupted our networks, turned some of our own people against us. They know everything. Then we must prepare, another commander said. We must recall our fleets, strengthen our defenses, mobilize our reserves. That is exactly what they want us to do, said. They want us to pull back, to concentrate our forces, to become defensive. While we prepare for an attack we cannot predict, they will continue their preparations, choose their moment, and strike when we are most vulnerable. The room erupted into argument, commanders shouting at each other, accusations flying, blame being assigned. In the chaos, sat quietly, thinking about Doctor's words. Fear is a weapon. The humans had already fired the first shot of their war, and it had hit exactly the target they intended. 3 months later, the attacks began. They came without warning, simultaneous strikes against 17 military installations across 5 different sectors. The human fleet appeared from empty space, emerging from hidden positions that should have been impossible to reach without detection. Their ships were fast, well-armed, and crewed by soldiers who fought with terrifying efficiency. Watched the reports come in from his new posting on the fortress world of Prime. Installation after installation fell, their defenders overwhelmed by forces that moved too fast, hit too hard, and seemed to anticipate every defensive measure before it could be implemented. But the attacks on military targets were not the true horror. The true horror came from the ground assaults, when Prometheus soldiers landed on worlds to engage in close combat. The reports from those battles were nearly incomprehensible, describing creatures that shrugged off plasma fire, healed from wounds that should have been fatal, and killed with a speed and brutality that veteran warriors could not match. One survivor's account stuck in his memory. A sergeant who had escaped the fall of Outpost described fighting a single human female who had killed 12 of his squad in less than 30 seconds. He had shot her 5 times at point-blank range, and each time she had fallen, then risen again, her wounds closing before his eyes. They are not soldiers, the sergeant had said, his voice hollow with shock. They are something else, something we have never seen before, something that was made specifically to destroy us. The High Council responded with massive force, sending their largest fleets to counter the human invasion. But the humans did not fight conventional battles. They struck in, hitting supply lines and communication networks, destroying infrastructure rather than holding territory. They were fighting a different kind of war, one they were not prepared for. 6 months after the war began, the Empire had lost control of an entire sector. A year later, 3 more sectors had fallen. The human advance was methodical, unstoppable, and utterly merciless. Spent those months studying the humans, trying to understand them, trying to find some weakness that could be exploited. He pored over every piece of intelligence, every battle report, every intercepted communication. And the more he learned, the more he came to a terrible conclusion. The humans were not just fighting to defend themselves. They were fighting to liberate every species that had ever conquered. They were giving weapons to former slaves, training resistance fighters, coordinating rebellions across the Empire. They were not trying to replace as the dominant power in the galaxy. They were trying to ensure that no species would ever dominate again. In his final report to the High Council, wrote something that no had ever written before. He recommended surrender, not a temporary truce, not a negotiated peace, but unconditional surrender to the human forces. The Council rejected his recommendation, calling him a coward and a traitor. But 6 months later, when human forces stood at the gates of they had no choice but to accept the terms they had once refused. Doctor was there when the surrender was signed, standing behind the human commanders as they accepted the capitulation of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Her red eyes met across the chamber, and she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. After the ceremony, she approached him. "You tried to warn them," she said. You told them what was coming. They did not listen. Would it have mattered if they had? Asked. Doctor considered the question for a moment. Probably not. We had been preparing for this war for 30 years. Your empire had grown complacent, convinced of its own invincibility. Even with warning, you could not have changed quickly enough to stop what was coming. Looked around at the human soldiers who now occupied the great hall of the. They moved with quiet confidence, their modified bodies making every presence seem slow and weak by comparison. These were the apex predators of the galaxy now, the top of the food chain. What happens now? He asked. Now we rebuild, Doctor replied. We help the species you conquered establish their own governments, their own defenses, their own futures. We create a galactic community based on cooperation rather than domination, and we make sure that no empire ever rises to threaten free peoples again. And what happens to my species? Doctor studied him for a long moment. That depends on your species. You can join the new community as equals, contributing your knowledge and resources to the common good, or you can resist and face the consequences of that choice. She turned to leave, then paused. You asked me once why we hate your species. The truth is, we do not hate you. We hate what your empire represented, the idea that power gives the right to dominate, that strength excuses cruelty, that survival of the fittest means the destruction of the weak. Her red eyes seemed to glow one last time. Humanity chose a different path. We chose to become strong not to dominate others, but to protect them. We chose to become monsters so that the innocent would not have to become monsters themselves. That is what the Prometheus program was truly about. She walked away, leaving alone in the ruins of everything his species had built. Around him, the galaxy was being reborn, reshaped by a species that had refused to accept the role of prey. They had discovered a secret human outpost, hopping to find easy victims, insignificant creatures to study and eventually conquer. Instead, they had uncovered the truth about humanity, a species that had looked into the darkness of the universe and decided to become something that the darkness should fear. In the end, the invaders had learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to offer. Humans do not accept extinction. Humans adapt. Humans overcome. And when threatened, humans become the most terrifying thing in existence. They become exactly what they need to be to survive.